Right, just before we crack on with this episode, just a quick word about our sponsor, KS Civils and Groundworks Limited, based in Leeds. They have over 296 years of combined experience in civil engineering and groundworks. Led by Director Carl Smith, their team is known for honesty, reliability and commitment to the highest safety and quality standards. They're proudly ISO accredited and fully CHAS Elite accredited. No matter the size of your project, KS Civils and Groundworks delivers professional, trustworthy service you can rely on. To learn more, visit kscivelsandgroundworks.co.uk. Now let's dive back into this episode. Hi, welcome back to the podcast. Tonight I've got a returning guest, Dan Smith. He appeared in episode, I think it was 47, where we talked about his time in the military and what he did canoeing from the top of Scotland all the way down to the bottom of England, solo as well, and raising money for charity. On that podcast, we were talking about his next challenge, and he was discussing and telling us about his next plan, which I thought was a bit mad. But then again, he is a bit mad, so there you go. And he canoed across the Yukon, which in itself is a feat of nature. You know, it's I can't get over it. And I've been and seen Dan talk about this adventure he did, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So I invited him back on the show, and we just want to talk about the trip in Canada, what got him to do it, what it was like, and you know the results of that. So welcome back to the podcast, Dan. It's lovely to see you again.
Yes, Frankie. Good to be on.
Right. So if we just start off, I mean, like in the introduction, and I mentioned that the last time we were on the podcast, you mentioned that you had this new adventure where you're going to canoe across the Yukon. What gave you the idea for that, and what was the preparation like for it?
So the idea was born back in lockdown, where we didn't have much to do, did we? So I was watching a lot of YouTube. It was, a few years after I'd done my challenge, Paddle of Britain, and I was itching for another challenge anyway. But I just kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. And anyway, I'd watched this video of this lad who'd soloed this river in Canada. Canada had always been there in the back of my mind where I wanted to go. And the Yukon in particular was an area I wanted to go. But this particular river, I mean, there's lots of rivers, as you can imagine, like in the Yukon. It's massive. Like the Yukon is the size of France, and it's only a small portion of Canada.
Jesus. Yeah.
So like it's another world. There's one city there, Whitehorse, which you can't really call it a city. It's about the size of Alnwick. And the rest of it is just wilderness. But there was this one river, this lad had paddled, and I just thought, I've got to do that. And I hadn't heard of anybody else paddling this particular river. So that was the plan.
What river was that?
So it's not the Yukon River, actually. The Yukon River is the biggest river that runs through the Yukon. It runs up to up to Alaska. But this is called the River Hess. Now, the Hess is a very, quite an unknown river, really. And it's really probably one of the most remote rivers in the Yukon, which is what attracted us to it, because I thought, if you're going to go all in. It has its dangers, which I guess we'll get onto, but it was well within my reach of my skills that I've got. It wasn't too crazy, but yeah, it had its challenges for sure.
I can imagine. I mean, one of the things you must have prepared for was the isolation. Because you were over there for quite a while as well, weren't you?
I was, yeah. We were in country for about 4 weeks. I was on the river. I got flown in. So we had a few days of prep. Actually getting there takes a few days to get all the way up there. I met a guy, sounds a bit dodgy, but I met a fella online a few years ago, Peter, who, a Canadian guy, because, if in doubt, seek local knowledge. I found this chap, he's a retired teacher, and he said he could help us out. He had a wilderness cabin, at the place where the river was, which was just perfect. So this guy was my helping hand. A few days to get there, and then flown out eventually with a float plane to the actual drop-off point, which was absolutely arse end of nowhere. I mean, talk about being in the Ulu. I mean, that is definition of being in the Ulu. It's like in the middle of nowhere, and it was so we're already, picture this, so we're already in the wilderness at the cabin at the start point. It's then an hour and 50 flight further north from what is already a wilderness to the headwaters of the Hess. So getting back to your question, when that plane takes off and drops you off, and it's a funny old feeling which I've never ever had before. I'd see why people could easily break and sort of crumble, but I'd researched this all to death, all these feelings, and that was one of my big, I guess, challenges that could happen was that feeling, and the people call it drop shock. So when that plane goes, you get dropped, people can just absolutely crumble just because of the sheer, aloneness straight away. So, I'd prepared myself for that. I was ready for it. And it was a weird feeling, but it was also a very exciting feeling, and I was happy to get going with this challenge.
What was it like? So, I mean, you've took off, you've got out there, right? You've got to this, like you say, the guy's cabin. And that sounds a bit weird as well. And you've took off again. You've flown out there. And as you're coming, I mean, you obviously you're flying around in the plane and you're looking around, and it must have been like more inspiring and amazing. And then when you see the river for the first time as you're coming down, what was the feelings of that like?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I was crapping myself, especially sort of the middle section. He flew over the Hess, the middle, and I knew there was lots of rapids in the river. And he said, "Look, Dan, I'll fly over the river just so you can get a scout of it and you can see what you're going to be going down." But and I can see the rapids from above. You see all the white ripples, and if it looks white from thousands of feet above, you know the rapids are going to be big down below. So in going through these massive jagged mountain peaks and ranges, flying in there was like, as you say, it was awe-inspiring. The feeling of the unknown, and it makes you feel alive, put it that way.
I mean, the logistics of this as well. I mean, all the kit you've got to take from the UK, and there's going to be stuff that you're going to need in country. I mean, did you have any like self-defense weaponry, bear spray, whatever, that type of stuff?
So Peter, the guy there, really did help us out and squared us away with all that stuff, because the next. So obviously I'd thought in the back of my mind, what are the main dangers before I went there. One was drop shock, freaking out when the plane goes. The next one is, the river, paddling the river. What am I going to do? Which craft am I going to choose? And obviously bears. So he took us through how to use bear spray. He gave us his Winchester pump action, which I was very grateful for. With loads of ammunition. We had a little bit of a range day before set off. So we were firing slugs at range, and using the bear spray and deploying the bear spray fast. That's people take that for granted. They'll just buy it and put it in the bag. Well, you haven't got long. Like if you surprise a bear, you've got seconds. Because these things are rapid and they can accelerate. 0 to 30 in seconds, and they're on you. So you need to be quick at getting that bear spray out. Flicking off the safety catch. There's a little plastic safety catch and spraying it. And not only spraying it, but spraying it effectively. So we practiced all that, deploying the bear spray, shooting the rifle, and that made me feel a lot better. Yeah,
no, I mean, it's a weird thing, isn't it? When you say you've got to prepare for bears. Us sat in the UK, the only time you see a bear's in a zoo, that type of thing. I mean, I remember the first time I actually seen a physical bear was in Canada. And we were up in the Rockies, and we were doing adventure training up there. And remember the old orange tents you used to get? Like they were shite. But we're all in a big circle. Yeah, we're all in a big circle, and getting up in the morning, zip down, or zip up, sorry, and then looked out, and everyone else was just like looking, what's going on? Shut up! What? And the fucking bear just sat in the middle of the campsite. Someone had left some food out the night before, and just sat there. It was just like, shit, what do you do? And it just got up and wandered off, that type of thing. But we had the only warning we had off the park ranger was, there's two types of bear around here, a brown bear and a black bear. If you see a black bear, climb a tree. If you see a brown bear, you've shit it, type of thing. That was the only training we got, fucking information. And then all of a sudden there's a bear in the middle of the fucking campsite. Like, Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
Well, yeah, they're quite. I mean, they're bigger than you think as well, aren't they?
they are, and you know, they don't have to be big to cause damage either. And Peter says, you know, your best defense against a bear is distance. If you've got that distance, and you've got more time to prepare yourself and make plenty of noise all the time if you're moving through brush and heavy undergrowth, making plenty of racket, singing, whatever, talking. I mean, obviously I self-recorded all of this as well, and it's on my YouTube channel, all the episodes. So making loads of noise, and like you say, don't leave any food around whatsoever around you. Don't cook around your tent. So I was really hot on any of that. All my main meals were cooked well away, wash everything, and even the clothes you've been eating in, they all get put into a bag and put into your food barrel. That's how sterile you've got to be. And the food barrel gets put, 300 meters away. And I was sleeping with a rifle next to us with rounds up in the rifle, and the bear spray there.
I mean, what was the closest you came to one? Because I've seen some of the videos when you'd seen them on the river and stuff.
Yeah. So day 2, so got dropped off up high up in the Selwyn Valley. As you can imagine, the water is very calm, and it's picking up pace. It's virgin waters, so it's quite slow. Beautiful place. I mean, this place was just phenomenal. Great big glacial valley. As soon as I got off the plane and went over the hill, there was a huge moose feeding. Just a lush, deserted wilderness. So I was kind of going through there, camped the first night. Obviously, I didn't get much sleep because I was paranoid. And then I was like, oh, this is actually okay. Woke up the next day, got on the boat. Nice day. Looking for a campsite. It was about 4 in the afternoon. I came around the corner and bang, straight away, I just spotted these 2 silhouettes of, bears, basically on the river bend. So I had that distance straight away. So I pulled in. My heart was like, it was weird. It was nearly bouncing out of my wetsuit, my dry suit. So I had to breathe deep breaths, get the rifle out straight away, just so it's there. Bear spray's there, but they weren't moving. They were about 150 meters away, and they were just
That's close enough.
Close enough, 100%. I think they were just kind of wondering what I was. They were trying to smell, they were up on the back legs and trying to smell, and maybe I was sort of upwind of them. I'm not sure. So I thought, let's get some pictures and some video, as you do. They're not going anywhere. And then I thought, right, I'm ready to move on now and carry on. I was going to camp there, but there was bear shit everywhere all around this place. I mean, that was their domain.
Yeah.
There was shite everywhere. I thought, I'm not going to camp here. I'm going to have to go, but these 2 are just sat looking at us, and there were 2 grizzlies. And I think it was mum and cub, or there were 2. Someone else has seen the video and they said the 2 like juveniles, but they weren't small. And so I was banging my paddle off the water, shouting, banging rocks together. People say that sort of deters them. It didn't deter these 2, and they were just sat. And then the bigger one, they both started to get high ground. And you'll see on the video, they start going up, and then they start to drop down over the other side of the river towards me. So then I did start to get panicky. So the shotgun came out and I fired a shot in the air, and then it took a little sort of split second for the the crack in the thump, that thing to happen, and then they both just turned and bolted through the willows. So off they went. So yeah, 150 meters as far as I know on the trip that I got close to the bears, but there might have been incidents where bears were closer to me than I didn't know about, or
Yeah, you don't know what's in the bushes, do you?
you don't. And the scary thing is, as the days went on, the river picked up. And to be honest, the biggest risk on that whole trip was that river. It was super challenging. I knew the Upper Hess in the guidebook said it was a handful, but when I got there, it was raging. Class. If anyone, if you know your grades, it's classes go up to class 5. Class 5 being the highest. And I was dealing with class 3s and 4s. And to be honest, like when you're paddling them by yourself, that's more than enough. Too much really by yourself. But
that was leads me to my next question. I was going to ask.
yeah.
So you've, like you say there, you've gone into the river, and it was all calm, calm and serene almost. Let's say. What was it like? What was going through your mindset when you first seen the rapids, the big rapids?
Where you hear them before you see them, and then the elevation in the ground starts to drop off, and that's what forms the rapids. And then the sort of mountain sides come in and almost form, like it started to form a bit of a canyon, and that alone is intimidating. And the noise, the roar, because I have swam in a lot of rapids in my lifetime, when I was learning, and even now, if you get it wrong, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible having to bail and swim, down a load of rocks, on a river with pals, let alone be in the absolute wilderness by yourself. Well, that's you've got to really control your fear. Just the biggest bit of advice I was given by a guy who's done a lot of stuff. He said, Dan, the worst thing you can do in the wilderness is rush. The minute you start to rush and just rush, basically, that's when things happen. That's when mistakes start happening. The catalogue of errors happens after that. And so I could feel myself rushing and just calm down and take it one step at a time. And, that risk versus reward thing, is that risk worth that reward? Or is it worth paddling that rapid, or can I walk around? So I did walk around some of the stuff that was just too big to paddle, but I also paddled some big stuff as well, which you'll see in the videos. And weirdly, when I got to those rapids, there was a tent on the island where I camped up. Another person was on that river, which was surreal, really. But I remember the pilot saying to me, "There's a guy 2 days ahead of you, and he's also solo." And I thought nothing of it. I thought, I'll not catch him. This chap called Joel, Canadian guy, 68-year-old. So he's on this island, and I rocked up, and I was like, "You must be Joel." And he went, "Yeah, what are you doing here?" Lovely guy. He was on a solo trip, and we had these big rapids ahead of us, the next day. And I said, "Look, well, why don't we both just help each other out here? It makes sense. We're both here. Let's just scout the rapids together and look after each other." And he totally agreed. And then that's what we done the next day. We hit the big stuff, and it was absolute carnage.
So go on, explain then, carnage. How do you mean?
So we started paddling them. You do a leapfrog effect. So you paddle one, then you get down there, you get your throw line out, and then your buddy paddles through, and you're there to rescue them just in case. And you kind of pick your way through the rapids like that. And it was going great in the morning. It was lovely. The sun was shining. It was getting challenging, and it was picking up and getting bigger and bigger. So we were getting a bit cocky and scouting rapids, and we pulled in. He ran a rapid. I then pulled in to just try and have a look at the rapid because it was quite big. I scouted the rapid, and I thought, I'm going to get back, get in my boat, and I'm not going to paddle this rapid. I'm not up for it, basically. I'm just going to walk around. Anyway, I walked back upstream to get my boat, to the horror of seeing the boat getting washed out and into the river with all my kit in. I mean, shotgun, clothes, food barrel, the lot was in there. And I hadn't tied the boat up, I hadn't. So I was in a rush, I was paddling these rapids, getting cocky, and I hadn't lashed it on to a rock, and a wave had come in and whisked the boat out of the eddy and pulled it into the main floor. So there's my boat. I'm stood in the horror, looking at my boat, going down into this massive rapid, this massive stopper. It goes into it, and I was thinking, please don't flip, because once that boat flips over, it's going to pull all the stuff out. The rapid's going to pull everything out. It was all tied in, but it would have ripped it out. And anyway, the boat just sits in this rapid, and it's upright, and I'm just stood. Joel's downstream of us, this guy, and again I'm panicking. I'm running towards this boat, trying to get it, and I can't get it, and I'm slipping over, bashing my knees. Again, I heard this voice in my head: stop, just take a deep breath, stop. So what can I do? The boat's sat in this stopper. So I went down to see Joel. I went down ahead of it. I just shouted, Joel! And I pointed at my boat. And the minute I'd done that, it got spat out the stopper and it headed towards Joel. And he waded out. Luckily, he was there at the right time and he grabbed it and pulled it in. So he rescued my boat. And then he came out of his boat about 20 minutes later and swam a horrible rapid by himself. And he got bashed down a big boulder garden. And his canoe went off about 3 kilometres downstream. And I had to chase boat that. I found his boat, about an hour later and retrieved it all. And then we called it a day there. That day, we'd only covered 4 kilometres that day. But it was all white water, and we both saved each other, really.
Yeah. So, I mean, how fortuitous was that you actually bumped into someone? And luckily he'd hung around. Like I said, he was 2 days ahead of you. Christ, can you imagine that happening with no one there? Fucking hell.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I think to myself now. Would that have happened if I'd been by myself? How would I have managed that? But luckily I had like a little survival pack on me, because that was one of the scenarios I thought in my head. What if I come out my boat and the boat gets pinned or it, bursts, because it was an inflatable. It bursts, and how am I going to survive? So I had like a mini set of webbing on me, like a civilian version of webbing, and it just sat. It was like a little pack at my back, and in there was like all my comms kit, sat phone, Garmin, survival shelter, and some food and some other odds and ends. So I would have had to sort of survive off that for maybe 24. I don't know how long actually till rescue would have come. Who knows? Yeah. Dodgy first few days.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, was that the toughest day you'd had on the river?
No. What I say no. It was the whole trip, Frankie, was just full on. And there's only one set of guide trip notes, which is in this little old book. And I've read it like hundreds of times. But there's so much more on that river that is accounted on the book. There's canyons, there's rapids. It's relentless. There's unmarked rapids on there, huge rapids that I had to sort of get around. And some of the canyons, you can't walk around them. You have to commit and go through them. And some of them were blind, so you didn't know what was around the corner, which is the biggest no-no in paddling is you don't paddle around blind corners. So there was a lot of decisions I had to make. Sometimes off the cuff and just go for it. Otherwise, it would have been meaning scaling up a massive canyon. And you don't want to be going into the trees much either when you're scouting rapids, because there's still the threat of bears.
Yeah,
you don't want to be. Do you know what I mean? And you forget about that because you're focusing on the rapids, or you're focusing on getting down the rapids and paddling this next feature. Then one day I just thought, shit, what about bears? Let's keep these bear spray handy, So that, yeah, it's constant. But at the same time, it was an amazing experience. Yeah, I'll never ever forget.
I mean, you mentioned there that it was an inflatable boat. Why? Why did you choose an inflatable boat?
So
this is like for a complete novice who knows nothing about anything.
Yeah, no. I mean, I've paddled hard shell canoes all my life and kayaks, and originally it was going to be a proper Canadian canoe, like a tough plastic, 14-footer, which is what Joel had, that guy on the river. But then I started thinking about the risk. What if? Because the problem with those boats are they're quite vulnerable. They're quite vulnerable in rapids. And I knew there was some big rapids on that trip. And when you punch into big wave trains, the waves can come over and they can fill the boat up, and then that's when you end up out. And so I started looking at inflatables. And you can get some very, very good inflatables. You can get these things called pack rafts. I don't know if you've seen them. Have you heard of these little pack rafts? These little stubby, really, really tough rubber, like kayaks, I guess, but they're inflatables. So I looked at them. They're very robust. People paddle them in Nepal and all over the place. But they're just a little bit too small for what I wanted. because I'm carrying a lot of kit for 12 days, as my shotgun and all the food. And so I started looking online, and there's a German company called Grabnar, and they specialize in these kind of bigger inflatable kayaks. And you know what German kit's like? It's well made. So it's tried and tested. I look at all the reviews, and some people have paddled this boat in massive rivers out in the middle of nowhere, So I got one of those, and you know what? It's self-bailing as well. So when you get waves into it, it's a bit like some of these ribs that you can get. The water goes out as you paddle. Yeah,
How's that work?
it's called the Venturi effect. But you need to be paddling forwards. When water comes in, there's a little hole at the back at the bottom, and it just kind of like a funnel, and it just gets sucked out as you paddle. So I know it's weird, but so that was it, and it's inflatable as well, so it's super buoyant. In that boat, I mean, I paddled some big stuff in that boat. You'll see in the videos, and it just punches through really big waves and features which a normal canoe would have sunk us, many a time on that trip.
So would you like if you were going on another adventure, which you probably are planning, would you go back with the same crafting or?
Do you know what? I think I would use that craft again, just because it's just so forgiving in white water. And the good thing about it is you can paddle it like a kayak. So what I mean by that is you can use a double blade rather than a canoe single blade, which is what I was going to. You can kind of sit upright in this thing I've got and use a kayak blade with two paddles on the end. You know what I mean? Like a kayak paddle. Which for that you can generate more power and you can react better in like a kayak. So it's kind of a hybrid type craft. Again, have a look at the videos and stuff, and you'll see what I mean. And it's got a very high rocker, and that means the sort of nose and the stern kind of they angle up like that, which makes it again really good for when you're punching through those big features in the water. It's just anything. The biggest risk out there to me was the river. So that's how I mitigated that risk, was to get that thing. And a few people, let's say purists in the paddling community, were kind of turning the nose up at me a bit and kind of going, "What are you using that thing for? It looks like a submarine." And I was like, "Well, okay, it does look a bit ugly, but if it's going to keep us alive, I'm gonna live to tell the tale." And do you know what, Frankie? It was the best decision I made. That boat is fantastic. I love it.
I mean, you've got yourself well motivated before you got out there, and you've got to keep that motivation going while you're on the river. And like you said, it was full on all the time, hard days. Not much sleep at night, stuff like that. You're not carrying a lot of food. You'll be getting tired. I've seen some of the videos where you were cooking your food and stuff like that. That's quite interesting. We'll talk about that in a minute. Was there any point where your motivation dropped? And if it did, how did you get it back up again?
Do you know what? There wasn't time to let your motivation drop, really. It was, in fact, I'll tell a lie. The Hess River joins the Stewart River. So it's a totally different river, which it joins into your last 3 days. And it's 90 miles. And it's much wider and really, really slow. You'll see in the last episode, which I'm going to put out in a minute, tomorrow, that was demoralizing, because all the high adrenaline stuff, the rapids and the canyons, that had all finished. So what I was in is just this big, wide open, almost to a trickle river, and the sun was beating down, and I had like 2.5 days of that, and it was, that was soul destroying. I would probably say that was mentally one of the toughest parts of the trip, because I'd soloed the Hess. I think I'm the first British person to solo the Hess. But I still had this bit to go, this long slog. And that was tough.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying there. If you like, after all the adrenaline pumping, and then all of a sudden you just, right.
And it was, Yeah, it was, and I had to keep reminding myself that Dan, you're in the Yukon still. Like keep your eyes peeled, and when you do keep your eyes peeled, you see stuff. You still see stuff, and I caught a glimpse of a little bear up on the hillside, sort of running along, and jumped over a log, and that kind of lifts your spirits. But then you just got trees and trees and trees for hours and hours and hours, and you're constantly looking at your little map on your Garmin, and you kind of go, oh, I'm just going to get around this river bend and then it'll change. But these river bends are like 4K long. Do you know what I mean? And when you're paddling that slow, it's like, when's this fucking river bend going to end? Like, it was so hot, and I was almost getting heat exhaustion at one point. It was like I had to stop over, pull a poncho up, and just get some shade, and took a bit of electrolytes and stuff like that. And so you'll see in the last episode, I found this cabin. I found a couple of cabins on the trip actually, but I found this cabin. I thought, oh, please God, I hope it's open, because I'm going to doss in here tonight. I'm not going to sleep in that tent again. I'd had 10 nights in this tent, and there was a defect with the poles. This is the most simplest thing, but it can be the most annoying thing when you're in the middle of nowhere and you have to repair a tent pole every single day. And then there was 2 poles that were broken. This was like a top class tent, but when the poles linked together, the sheath inside disappeared inside the pole, which you think, well, that's easily solved. It's not, like, and you have to splint the pole every night, and then you've got midges biting you when you're trying to put the poles in, and it's like all of a sudden a little problem becomes a big problem. So anyway, this cabin was open on the last night. It just so happened to be open. It was pristine, clean, and there was nobody there. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna doss here tonight. So that was a lovely end to that very last night. I got in there, I got a brew on, and I sorted myself out, and I had a really good night's sleep, and didn't have to put that bloody tent up. Yeah.
I mean, going back to, like you say, what you were cooking in, which leads me on to ask about the equipment that you had. So you mentioned earlier you had comms, you've got protection, bear spray. What other stuff did you actually take with you? I don't know if this is a question I should ask, but how did you finance it all? I mean, it was all sponsorship, was it?
Yeah, stroke of luck. I mean, as you can imagine, that sort of trip costs a lot of money. The most expensive part of that trip is the float plane, the little plane that flew me out there. That was about $3,000 to fly nearly 2 hours into the wilderness. So there was that. There was the food that I got out there, which didn't cost that much. Bits of kit wise was, I borrowed a lot of Peter, which he helped me out a lot with stuff, axes and saws and things like that. And I brought all, dry suits. So it all mounts up. The whole trip, I don't mind telling you this, the whole trip costs, to do something like that, about $8,000 it cost. So
that's not as much as I thought it would be, to be honest.
Right. Yeah, about $8,000 for me. That's for everything, flights and the whole lot. I tried to strip it down as much as I could, but you don't want to scrimp at the same time. So you ask for sponsorship. Ask people for sponsorship. I was putting out all the posts and things and what I was doing. So I got a few people on board, which was really good. And even you can just get some good discounts, for kit. Like for the canoe, I asked them, the German company, I said, look, this is what I'm doing. Can you give us some discount? And they gave us a good chunk. But the best one was Team Forces, which is actually one of the charities that I was raising funds for. Still am, actually. So Team Forces, they fund military sporting adventures and events. So they funded me $5,000 for the trip, which was a massive help.
Yeah.
Really good charity. And they fund lots of people, adventurers and explorers and people, not just that, but military events as well, they'll fund. So I rang the guy up a couple of years ago, and I said, what's the chances? And he said, look, I love what you're doing, and we can help you out. So what a good charity. So I'm putting money back in the pot for them. I paid my debts for them. So I'm going to present them with a check actually next month of $5,000, which I've raised. It's for Team Forces, and then the other charity is Launchpad Veterans.
I know
Who,
Launchpad.
we were at the ball, weren't we?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
I was
it
very,
turns
very
out
lucky on the financial front.
Yeah, it turns out I've got another connection with Launchpad as well, because one of my mates is in there at the moment, the one in Wallsend.
Okay.
And if it wasn't,
Yeah, great charity.
It is a brilliant charity. But they do a lot more than I thought, to be honest. Getting people off the streets and everything. It really is good.
They are. I've got a lot of time for them, and they've made me an ambassador, which I'm, very proud of. So I'm sure whatever I do next, I'll be raising funds for Launchpad.
And if anyone wants to look into that, there'll be links for Team Forces and Launchpad in the show notes on this one. I mean, going back to Canada, I mean, did you have to ask permission to do this? Or could you just rock up and jump in the river?
Yeah, you can. You can, it's kind of use at your own risk type thing. Do you know what I mean? You don't go out there, those sort of places, unless you think you can. You think you can do it. And you know me, Frankie, I've been in the outdoors all my life. And since I left the military, even when I was in the army, I was, training in the outdoors. And I've always had a love for the wilderness, and I'm comfortable in that place, and but I've done a lot of paddling in my life. Now, had I not thought I was able, I wouldn't have went out there. And honestly, it is use at your own risk. There was times where I thought I've bitten off more than I can chew sometimes. But that's then part of the adventure as well. When you get through it and you think, wow, I've actually done that. I've soloed this river, this technical river.
I mean, you go back there, you say there, like, sometimes it might have been bitten off too much. How do you plan for anything going wrong? Like, recovery yourself, support. You mentioned you had a sat phone, and a GPS. But I mean, like, say in the wilderness, anything happens to you, it's going to compound it 1,000 times. If you broke a leg or how did you organise the medical recovery, the support, the background of that?
Yeah. So that again, like I spent days thinking about this, and if it all goes wrong, what can I do? So first of all, you need some kind of recovery plan for international insurance pickup, which you pay for before you go on the trip. So there's a company called Global Rescue. So if anybody out there is thinking about doing anything, even if you're just going skiing off piste or something a bit more adventurous in the mountains, it's good to have that cover. But Global Rescue will pick you up. You pay them a fee, and they'll do remote rescue for wherever you are. So that was the first one. Global Rescue. Make sure it's all in date and sign into it before you go on your trip, because the apps, you can download the app on your phone and that'll work. It'll work off satellites. Global Rescue. Then there's the Garmin InReach device, which has SOS on there. I'm in touch with Owen. So, can you remember Ski? It was in our regiment. So Ski's son came with me. He stayed in the cabin while I was on the river. So he was fishing and stuff like that. But Ski's son, he was my point of contact before I left, him and Peter. And we had a plan. We discussed, what if I don't hear from you, Dan, from like a day, 2 days? When do I alert rescue? So we sat and thought, and I said, we agreed on 3 days. If you hear nothing for 3 days, then send people out to find us. So you need that, you always need that. He obviously knew where I was. So whenever I sent a message with a Garmin, it would ping my location every time back to him. And he knew the map, he knew the area that I was in roughly each day. So yeah, you can't like scrimp on anything like that, like the SOPs if something goes wrong. And then I had that little survival pack on us. Yeah, you just got to try and, yeah.
I mean, how did you keep in touch with obviously you had the sat phone. I mean, you kept in touch with the family as well.
Yeah. So the Garmin was the main source of comms, really, the Garmin InReach. Cracking device. I should have brought it to show you. You can text off it, you can email off it. Works off satellite, obviously. Text, email, and you can also tether it to your phone, so you don't have to keep using the little Garmin device. You can do everything what the device does on your phone. So it's just a bit easier. So I was able to send text messages to everybody, and the sat phone, that was there just really as an emergency backup, just in case the Garmin went down. I wanted a secondary form of comms just in case.
I mean, I imagine as well, we know what it's like when you're away on tour and stuff like that. Just being in touch with your loved ones at home, it's a morale booster. So I mean, if you had a hard day on the river, it'll be nice to send and receive a few texts and just make sure let everyone know you're okay, and then hearing from home as well.
Yeah. I mean, my wife Caroline's she's a paddler as well, so she knows all the risks. And she was just like, all I want you to do is just text us every time you're off the river, every day. So that was the little ritual that we had. Every time I got off, I would just say, yeah, all good. Had a good day. I didn't want to give her too much detail. I didn't tell her what was happening on day 3. I didn't mention about the bears. People, you think differently when you're back home. God, and it all gets amplified. But I kept that out of the way for at least till I nearly finished. Tell her about that. But she knew the biggest risk was the water, really. But now
one thing I haven't asked is how cold was it?
Well, freezing. Because it all came off a big glacier. So you got these huge mountains behind the Hess River, and it comes off big ice fields and glaciers. So it's initially it's a lovely sort of turquoisey blue color, and then because it's that like silty type water that comes off the glacier, and it is friggin' freezing. I mean, I was in a dry suit most of the time. You couldn't do it in anything else, because if you went into there, you wouldn't last long. And then even all the way to the end, it was freezing cold, and it gets a really dark grey colour. It changes colour, and that was another issue as well, was water filtration. So I had charcoal filter bottles, and I was using them a lot, and I was boiling up water for brews and things like that. But towards the end, I got a bit lazy, and I was drinking out of streams. I was just filling my bottle up and swigging it. Lovely fresh water stream coming off a mountain. Thought I was fine, and I actually caught a thing called Giardia, which is commonly known as beaver fever.
Beaver fever. Fucking hell, yes.
You heard of it?
Yes. Yeah. I know a lad who had it, and he wasn't well.
Yeah. Well, that kicked in because it's got like a 10-day incubation period. So that didn't kick in till I was on the plane on the way back. My guts were kind of, this is like, what's happened here? I've eaten something. But so I got home, and then it just kind of kicked in massively. So give a sample to the doctor, and they were like, "You've got Giardia." And I was like, "No way!" I was being so careful, like all the way. But I remember it was probably that mountain stream that I drunk out of, But it's not nice.
One of the lads when we went to Canada, Wayne.
Oh yeah.
He was over there on the advance party, and the rest of us came out, and he'd been there for 10 days, and he lost about 3 stone.
Yeah.
He looked like a fucking skeleton when we got out, and it said beaver fever. What the fucking hell's that? If anyone doesn't know, the equivalent probably over it is Veil's disease, isn't it? So it's like off rat piss or whatever.
Yeah. It's a parasite. It's a parasite from animal feces, and it's not to do with dirty water. It's just what's over there,
It's just contaminated.
Yeah, and basically you just intense diarrhea and sickness until you get your tablets. Horrible. Yeah.
What was it like recovering from there? Not recovering from the illness, recovering from Canada. I mean, when you got to the end of it, there's not going to be anyone there like fucking blowing a trumpet or having a fanfare or got the flags out for you. Was it an anticlimax at the end of it, or was there such a feeling of like euphoria of actually completing?
Yeah. No, there was euphoria. I mean, I had Owen there, Owen and Peter, So I basically paddled into the float plane base where I took off. So they were both, so two people were there waiting for us, and that was nice. It was nice to be back, but yeah, feeling of euphoria you always get whenever you do something big. Yeah, it's just the best feeling in the world. Frankly, you know it is. It's just that's one of the main reasons why I do these challenges is that feeling of accomplishment at the end. There's nothing like it, and it stays with you for forever, really. But yeah, just to get back on solid ground and see people was nice, and to have a nice shower was nice. Yeah,
the simple things in
yeah.
life.
Exactly, and there's another thing. You know that's another reason why I like this is just to appreciate the simple things. You know, having a cold beer, having a nice hot shower, you know, having a nice cup of tea, and putting fresh clothes on. Just those simple things that we just take for granted, don't we?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
when you look back on it now, and what was the highest point and what was the lowest point for you?
The highest point was probably getting through those big rapids, that getting through the upper Hess, because that was always a questionable choice. I could have put in lower down on the river and avoided the big stuff, but I decided I was just going to do the whole lot and put in at the top. And because I had this new canoe, I thought, you know, we'll be able to cope with it. So that was, but getting through that was the highest point, I guess. You know, paddling the upper Hess was like get in. It was a big tick. Seeing the bears was a high point as well, and just seeing them in the wild and dealing with it, you know, and it all turned out all right. Lowest point? It's hard to really say. The lowest point was losing the boat, wasn't it? You know, it was losing that boat, and I forgot to tell you, when the boat was in that stopper bouncing around, the pump for the boat popped out, so I lost the pump for the boat. So if something happened, if that boat had bust, I would have been screwed. So Joel said, "Yeah, I saw the pump pop out of the boat, and it's gone." So I was lucky that the remaining 10 days I didn't puncture the boat because I would have been screwed.
I mean,
point.
It's not your fucking bike in a tube, is it? You know what I mean?
Nah, and
it was on it and blow it up again.
Yeah, I mean, I did have a little tiny electric pump, but it can't get it up to the pressure that you need. I might have been able to limp back, but there was a couple of abrasions on the back of the boat at one point, and I was inspecting the boat every night, turning it over and having a look. So I patched a few of those abrasions up, and it was fine. You know, got us all the way at the end. So that was my low point, losing that.
I can imagine. Yeah. I mean, you just mentioned there, like you were checking the boat every night. I mean, that's got to start playing on your mindset as well, getting a bit paranoid about the boat and stuff like that. How did you keep your mind level?
Taking it one step at a time. And you know, breathe. It sounds airy fairy, but you know, just breathing techniques and deep breaths, just calming yourself down and breaking the trip down bit by bit. And just telling yourself why you're doing it. You know, why you're doing this, for one. Yes, it's a challenge. You're also raising awareness and funds for homeless veterans. So that's, you know, you can always draw back on that. That was like on the last challenge, you know. Why are you doing it?
I mean, do you think your mindset there, do you think that goes back to your time in the military, or do you think you've always had that?
Well, I think it's developed over time. I guess, you know, the military has helped a lot. You grow, don't you, as you get older, your mind changes and you get influenced by different people who inspire you. You take all the good things from people. So I think the military definitely has helped, being influenced and done some of the stuff I've done and achieved. Yeah.
But as you left the military and then started on this journey or this part of your life, I mean, you don't look back and think, "Oh, I wish I'd stayed in." I know, because we discussed that last time we were on. Let's say your growth as a person, is that mainly been down to what you do now?
No, not entirely. I think it's as I say, it's a mixture of stuff. Certainly, from I always draw back to the army. I do, and it was a. I always say, it was a big saviour for me joining the military. It was, as I say, I didn't leave academically. I didn't do well at school at all, and it was a kind of a last chance saloon. Join the army. You know what I mean? Or I would have been in a factory like the rest of them, or whatever. Not there's anything wrong with working in a factory, but it was the best thing I'd done. Is that certainly molded me and shaped me as a person who I am today.
I mean, it's been said many times to me that squaddies are just big kids. They've never grown up, and to a point, they're right as well. They really are. Do you think with what you do, you're just a bigger kid now, and you're never going to grow up?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, God, I hate the sound myself when I get too serious. Why not? Why can't we still play and do the stuff that we love to do and have fun? Just because we're older. I refuse to stop until I'm unable to do it. I will carry on paddling around and having fun in the outdoors. Definitely.
Playing in the woods. I mean, you said that there, playing. And it's a known fact that once you stop playing, you either become a boring adult or you die. We have to find something to keep us going. For some people, it's fucking like me, making models, doing podcasts. Well, more doing podcasts than that. You have to find a purpose in life and carry on. And like you going out in the woods and whittling away with your carbons and fucking doing survival courses for people and stuff like that. That's your niche. That's your life. For me, it's doing the podcast. But I think everyone should find something to do to keep them going. Because if you don't, it'll be like what we spoke about before we started recording, and you can end up in a slump, and it's hard to get out of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to have a hobby of some sort. I mean, I'm extremely lucky that it's my job as well. I take people out climbing and doing bushcraft and survival and canoeing, and I have to pinch myself sometimes that it's my job also, and so I'm very lucky in that respect. But I still got to give myself challenges. I guess that's why, because I'm immersed in the outdoors all the time. I've now got to find the next bigger challenge. The next, paddling down Loch Lomond isn't enough for us, or now it's got to be something different. And why not?
I mean, that leads me on to the next question, which is, what is next? Are we going to see you canoeing across the channel?
Oh, no, probably not. I don't know.
Do it on the way back, mate. You'll get an house.
On the way, exactly. I might do. That could work, couldn't it?
Yeah.
I might not be able to get moved in the channel with all the bloody boats. Yeah. No, do you know what? So people ask me this question, and sometimes things just present themselves without having to try and force it. When I went down to Team Forces charity do, I met some really interesting people there who were also doing stuff. So I'm connected with a few people now, and I'm getting messages off them saying, Dan, do you want to do this? Dan, do you want to join us on this? So there's all sorts of things in the pipeline. I've always fancied crossing Mongolia, the Gobi Desert. It's never been done in wintertime, so that might be an option.
There's probably a reason for that.
There's a reason for that, I know. What else? I mean, I fell in love with the Yukon, and there's so many other rivers out there which I would like to paddle. But challenge-wise, let's just see. I think something will come along, and it's a balance as well with a family. It takes what people don't see is it takes a massive toll on the family, because I must be a nightmare to live with, because when I pick a challenge, I just get laser focused on it, and everything is just about this challenge, and that's why, touch wood, I've always been okay on these challenges, because I've just planned it to an inch of its life, and I get obsessed with it. I do. I really get obsessed. So and that sort of has an effect on the family, and adjusting back to it's tough as well. Coming back home, that's hard. people don't think about that either.
I mean, that goes back to the military side as well. I mean, we could go on tour and come back.
Yeah.
You've got to get, like you say, you've got to get used to getting back home and that. And within the military, we were always used to not just coming to get on, but your family gets used to you not being there. And obviously, they get their little routines going, and obviously you're back home as well. And I think my kids used to say, "Oh, Dad's home," type of thing.
Yeah.
But you're right. You've all got to adjust to each other again as well.
You have. And what was weird about this challenge was the last one, it was in the UK, wasn't it? And going through the UK, and the kids can kind of see us on the map, and it was a bit more real. Whereas this one in Canada, I was so far away from everybody. People didn't really appreciate, where I was. It's not their fault. They just couldn't really picture it. And it was such a big thing when I'd finished personally. I'd soloed the Hess, and it was almost like, when I'd sort of messaged home, it was like, oh, well done, when you're coming back. And it was like, I've just nearly, I've been shooting at bears, and I've been, going through rapids, and you don't understand, this thing was massive, and they don't understand, until you show them the videos and things, and it's like, oh shit, yeah, that was pretty. So that was a bit weird, actually, trying to get across to people what I'd just done, because they were so far away. It doesn't really come across the same.
I mean, it's like you mentioned there that nobody knows what it's like there. I mean, for people who've been to Canada and you understand the enormity of the place, the size of the place, it's unreal. I know a guy who moved houses and he decided to self-drive, and it took him 12 days to move his kit from one city to another. It was all right. It was across Canada, but you're just like, what?
Yeah.
We can comprehend that.
Yeah.
In the UK.
Yeah.
Obviously, I go out in my van and I drive around Northumberland a lot to find places to stay and all that. And it's a wonderful, beautiful place. But it's not very big.
No.
I can go from one side of the country to the other in an hour and a half. In a car, not walking.
I know, and it was, the scale of it, and even we were in a small part of it, and it was, from Peter's house in Whitehorse to the cabin was, it's a 6-hour drive. Like, he would just say that like it was just, we're popping down to Newcastle, So we were in the truck for 6 hours, just going up the Klondike Highway, and just pine tree after pine tree after pine tree, just forever and ever. And even just a day's travel to get there, it's like traveling all the way down to London or even further. It's like traveling to Exeter from Newcastle. Just the scale of the place is enormous. Yeah, you're right.
So it is absolutely crazy. I mean, before we go off and finish the podcast, a couple of questions I've got here about your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I know we spoke about this a long time ago. And you were starting a YouTube channel with, all the videos that you were doing, stuff like that, with no knowledge of it whatsoever. And as you've probably discovered, YouTube's quite hard work. How did you prepare for the filming of stuff? I've watched some of your first drone. And I'd love to get a drone, but not because I'll go down that rabbit hole and I'll never come out of it.
Yeah.
How did you prepare for that? What lessons did you learn? How did you learn it and stuff like that?
With all the filming, it was just, going on YouTube and speaking to friends who have got them, and just trial and error, getting the drone out, flying it around, taking it on adventures, and just having little practices, and they're pretty easy to use, the drones, as long as you fly them in the right weather. Excuse me, I got a frog in my throat. In the filming side of things, learning about, the size of cards and I had to get a bit of help with a friend he works in the filming industry. So he was good, actually. He sent me almost like a crib sheet of how to set up all the GoPros, which memory cards to get, label all your memory cards, back them all up. And the battery management was a big thing out there. I had 6 cameras to manage, as well as a drone, as well as film, and as well as, doing the journey itself. So I was never bored out there. I was always busy, whether it was getting the cameras charged up with the solar panels, changing memory cards, trying to get the right angle, trying to get a good shot. That was hard graft in itself. And I had done a few trips previous to Canada just to get used to it and using the kit. So it was all self-taught, Frankie, really.
Yeah. I mean, how much feedback have you had from the YouTube channel?
At the minute, we're at the back of the algorithm still. I think might be biased, but I think it's really good content, good rich content, isn't it? The colours, the scenery that I'm shooting is like phenomenal. It's all in 4K. But at the minute, I'm at the back of the algorithm, so no one can really see it. I think it's like 380 subscribers. So I have been bringing a video out every 2 weeks, so it's not very regular. So when this last episode comes out, I'm going to do more. Apparently, you've got to keep the content, continuous. So a couple of videos a week if you can. So it's hard graft. It's hard graft, and apparently it does snowball eventually. Once you get over so many followers, then more people see it, and then we can grow the channel more. So that's all I'm going to try and do. Yeah.
It can become obsessive, though. I'll tell you that now. Don't look at your stats. That's what I'll say. Don't look at your stats. Because just piss it off.
Well, it's like
right.
Yeah. Sorry, you've got to just say one last thing about that. You have to, make sure the thumbnail's good. Make sure. I was just putting a nice title on a video saying, I don't know, day 4 in the Yukon and in a nice picture. And it's like, no, that's boring. You have to put a surprised face and I nearly died to get people hooked in, which is frustrating, really, that you've got to do that. But
yeah, I mean, I've been told exactly the same thing. My thumbnails are shit, but I can't force myself to do, I don't know, clickbait.
I know you're exactly like me.
And all that, I just can't do it.
Cringeworthy, isn't it? I know.
Yeah, but it's what we've got to do in the end.
Yeah.
There's loads of things out there that you can use to help you and stuff like that, and as we discussed earlier with AI. But it's just I just can't get around to it. It's not normal.
I guess it's is it a hobby or do you want to try and monetize it? That's the bit what you're at, isn't it? What do you want from it? But no, my channel's called Dan the Adventure Man. Yeah.
Right, we've been on for an hour. I don't want to take up any more of your time.
Pleasure.
It's been lovely seeing you again. I might ask you for some clips of your YouTube channel to put in with this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Put it in a corner.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what you're going to do next. I know you said you've got nothing planned, but like you said, something's going to come along, and I reckon
it will.
And it'll be great to see what you come up with next.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll have to see and wait.
Right, again, thanks for coming on, mate.
Thanks, Frankie.
I'm going to stop the recording now. It's been lovely seeing you again, chatting to you again.
Cheers, buddy. You too, mate. And let's just keep in touch as normal. And
yeah, we'll do, mate.
Aye. Say hello to Chris for us if you see him.
I will do. I'm going to ring him tonight. He's on holiday. So I'm just
Is he?
Give him a ring. Have a guess who I've been talking.
Nah, it's good to chat, mate.
Yeah, it is, mate. Right.
Cheers, Frankie.
Cheers.
Take care, buddy.
I hope you enjoyed that podcast. I enjoyed recording it. If you could just hit the like button, and also if you could subscribe and hit the notification bell, that would be great, because it'll help the channel grow. The more people will see it, the bigger it'll get, and the more guests I can get on, and the more people I can talk to. Well, I hope you enjoyed it, like I said. Look forward to the next one. Hopefully we'll be out next week as normal. Bye-bye now.